video today, I'm actually going to be doing a sketchbook spread that I'm so proud of. I was really inspired. I'll probably try and put it up on the screen. I hate when people say they're going to put stuff up on the screen and they don't, so I'm going to put up on the screen the particular design piece that inspired me, but having a VCD or kind of like graphic design background, every once in a while I see something and I'm just really incredibly inspired by the composition and the typography on the piece, and so that's what I'm pulling for inspiration from today. And the spread that I just created, I loved the flow, the way that the different pieces were interacting with each other. The sketches were fun and derpy and they were making me laugh, and I was just really happy with the way that this entire spread turned out. If looking at a sketchbook spread about some fish sounds appealing to you, feel free to stick around. If you're new around here, hi, hello, how are you? I'm Rory Flint. Feel free to call me Rory. Feel free to suss out the vibes. I like to create dope art content, or at least art content that I think is dope, and a chill atmosphere where it's just me chatting into the void and hoping that somebody wants to listen. So if that sounds like something you'd like to enjoy, please stick around for this video. I'm incredibly proud of this particular spread. And if you're not new around here, what is up, my dudes? I hope you're having a great day, and I'm just so excited to start talking about my process for this particular sketchbook page. As you can see, I already have the sketch completed. I was really inspired by this video game called Dredge that I've been watching my partner play. And then on top of the video game, I was also inspired by this particular Pinterest post that I saw of a poster for a fish market of some kind. It's in a language I think that I'm not super familiar with, so I wasn't sure what the actual typography was saying, but the way that it was laid out on the page, I just found incredibly inspiring. I'm a type nut. I adore it, but hand lettering and hand doing type is not necessarily something that I can do traditionally. I'm a lot better at doing it on Procreate or in Illustrator, either one, with like a pressure sensitive pen. It comes a little bit more naturally to me. So the typography that you're seeing here is just a really quick layout of like where I wanted the letters to be. It's less about like the quality of the actual type and more just about the placement and the feel and the pops of color and the spacing in the letter forms and the way that they're interacting with the foreground and background. As I mentioned, I was watching my boyfriend play Dredge, and it's all about like, I don't know, I read a Steam comment that described it as fish Tetris, and I think that that's pretty apt, honestly. The only thing that's missing from that comment is that it's also like, I guess it would be more like Lovecraftian fish Tetris, because it's definitely like got a lot of horror elements to it. Specifically, the fish that's had his head cut off is inspired by the piece of art, or the, what are they called? Spot illustrations. The spot illustration that pops up on the screen every time that you interact with the fishmonger, or the dude that's gonna sell the fish that you, fish Tetris into your boat, basically. And, his actually, like, the spot illustration that pops up for him is just this really beautiful, like, impressionistic painting of a guy. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Disco Elysium, but it's got that feel to it, particularly the way that the people are expressed. But the actual setting and game itself has a lot more of like a cell shading thing to it, where it looks a lot like Death's Door, personally one of my favorite games I've ever played. But going back to what I was talking about, the fish with the head cut off is directly inspired by the spot illustration of the fishmonger, because it's just this guy in a really impressionistic, it's just this guy who's been painted in a really impressionistic way, and he's got this giant butcher's knife and a fish with its head cut off. The colors you'll see are pretty much exactly inspired by the Pinterest post. I just loved the oranges and the grays, and I wanted to create a sketchbook spread with those colors interacting with each other. I was having a lot of fun just drawing like really weird, derpy looking fish. The cat that's like feasting on the fish, I know that's a little morbid, but I was watching a gel arts video recently, or maybe it was like an Instagram short or an Instagram reel or whatever. She was talking about how it was kind of morbid, but she loved the way that cats look with like fish in their mouths. And so I kind of wanted to draw like a fish just like chomping on a derpy little fish. And did I say a fish chomping on a fish? A cat chomping on a fish. And I imagined this like really large fat cat with a pile of fish, just stinky fish sitting next to it. And I really enjoyed the way the smoke or the stench kind of like came up from the bottom of the page and interacted with that fish with the head cut off. And then I think my favorite sketch of the page is, you'll see it a bit more clearly as it becomes more fleshed out, but it's a catfish in a like wrap, almost like a hobo sack, and with a stick through it, so it's literally like a hobo sack, but it has a catfish in it. And I really loved the way that sketch ends up turning out. This one in particular was a lot of fun to just watch come to fruition. I was really happy with the process almost all the way through. I do feel like I end up over-rendering the cat a little bit, like where it's at right now was probably perfect, and I do go in and add a little bit more shading particularly, which I'm just not sure it needed, but I don't know, maybe by the end of this voiceover and watching it back I'll disagree with that, but no, I really feel like the process of just watching this sketchbook spread, or page I guess I should call it, slowly coming together, it makes me really happy, because I can see how I was building the layers and the different mediums that I was using were interacting with each other and layering in a way that I was really happy with, and I actually built some depth, which was really cool to see, and worked with some really nice shadows, and sometimes I can get a little lost into where I'm supposed to put the shadows to make it look the most like correct. I'm not going for realism here, but I certainly don't want my shadows to just look thrown on. It's definitely overall like the little details that start to make this spread come together for me. The little scales on the fish that I'm just doing with paint, and the spots on the catfish, and then I'll fill in a pattern that's on the fish with the head cut off, and just the tiny details that start to create texture and just add different variables to the sketchbook spread, where as your eye bounces around the page, you have flat pieces of color like with the type, and round circular shapes like these orange slices in the background, and then you have more textured, smaller details on the catfish, eventually on the cat, and on the large fish going vertically. And I just feel like in the end, they kind of interact with each other on the page and create a really full looking spread. I actually want to use this spread to kind of base all my other spreads off of. I don't necessarily want to follow like the same pattern, but just the idea of these interacting elements that are bleeding into each other, it makes me very happy, and I would like to continue to utilize that theme and idea in my sketchbook and throughout the rest of the sketchbook, honestly. Everything came very easy for the sketchbook spread, so I don't have it sped up, or I don't have the footage sped up as much as I normally speed up sketchbook videos, or really any painting process at all, because the whole thing was just very quick. I was really able to just focus on all the different elements on the page, and as I was focusing on painting one thing, the thing that I just painted would dry, so then I could immediately go back over it. It's kind of one of those perks of drawing like smaller things. Now, all of this is way more, it's way larger. This particular sketchbook spread is larger than anything that I would normally paint. I'm much more used to working in an 8.5 by 5 size, or maybe an 8 by 10, but I've never really worked in an 8.5 by 11, and I even feel like I could push it a little bit more and go to like I think the next size is a 9 by 12, yeah. And I've only ever used those sketchbooks to like iteratively draw thumbnails for like design pieces. I've never actually used them just as a sketchbook spread for like illustrations or spot illustrations and doodles. Those were much more about process and filling the page with just small thumbnails, and not really about utilizing the space in any way or really using it as much of a sketchbook in the same way at all. When I was doing my design projects, it was much more about that iterative process and creating as many ideas as humanly possible so that you could filter through them and then decide which ones were good and then draw them a little bit bigger on the next page. And so that's why you kind of needed a sketchbook that was a lot larger, because you were expected to have and to create lots of ideas and then to slowly filter through those ideas to create the design piece that you would end up turning in as your final. So when it comes to this particular spread, the paint actually dries quickly, but it's honestly nothing compared to like the 8.5 by 5 where the sketches barely had any paint on them at all, honestly. And that's why I ended up coming to a bigger sketchbook, because I got sick of not being able to add more detail. But if I'm being honest, I feel like starting at the 8.5 by 11 was a good thing, because I got a lot of feel for form and shape and silhouette. And so as I kind of doodled in that for years and years, I've gotten to the point where I felt the need to expand and I felt the need to grow into a larger sketchbook. Which means that it was something that I needed to do to make my art better, because I was getting a little stagnant and drawing the same things and doing the same things. And this sketchbook has really helped me feel like I'm moving in a positive direction for my art and actually growing. At this point, you can really see the catfish in the kind of wrapping really coming together. I was really happy with all the different textural elements that were being added to the catfish, and I kind of take that and add more textural elements to the other fish and just other items on the page as well, because I was really happy with that sketch, and I was like, okay, now I need to elevate all the other sketches on the page to be just as good as this one, because I really wanted just the whole spread to be really nice and something that I quite liked. Though I don't love the super derpy fish in the bottom left corner, I did think it was funny that his mouth was open and he's trying to eat oranges. Returning to Dredge for a second, though, I haven't completed, or rather my partner hasn't completed the game yet, so I think we're maybe a little over halfway through it, or maybe at the halfway point, because we visited 3 islands of 4 or 5, and we're still not like super sure what the hell is happening in the game, honestly. Like, we have no idea what's going on. It's just that like the fish are super weird, and there's some really big fish and a little bit of magical powers, but other than that, I don't really have any idea where the story is going. But I'm like super excited, because like the art style, I wish there was a printed art book, because I love collecting art books specifically for like indie movies and indie games. So Dredge totally fits that category. So I wish that they had a physical copy, but they do have a digital one, and I might end up in the future just going to like FedEx or UPS, even though it'll cost me like $20, and just having them print it out for me. Assuming that I don't know, assuming what kind of, I guess it would probably be a PDF. So if it's a PDF that I could print front to back and figure out what like size to do it on, that would probably work, actually. So I don't know. Maybe I'll end up doing that, because I love this game so far, and I don't think that it's gonna flop the ending, especially with like the reviews that it's getting right now. And I just I love the I don't know, the small details, like the fact that the boat rocks in the waves, or at night if you honk your horn in a certain pattern, I don't know if you're around a certain area or if it's just something that happens or what, but a like ghost boat will honk that same pattern back at you. And the first time it happened, my jaw dropped. I was like, what is happening? The game itself is just like so much fun. It's very relaxed and only amps up in like certain parts, you know, like when you're in the deep sea or you're around this particular island that has like a big fish around it that's trying to attack and eat you. And the game does like a really good job at being unsettling and creepy and then scary in really key moments. And I love that, because I'm a huge horror nut. So this sort of like Lovecraft vibe that it's got going on is really cool, because even though I haven't I'm not like the biggest fan of Lovecraft horror, I do love video games inspired by Lovecraftian horror, and so this is just kind of like right up my alley. And it was a game that I was actually going to play by myself, but I just decided, I was like, I know that he is going to really enjoy this game, and so I ended up wanting him to play it and me to watch, so that he could enjoy it and we could both enjoy it together. And honestly, I'm a lot more of a game watcher than a game player, so I enjoy just sitting around, sketching, watching what's going on, but maybe not necessarily playing the game myself. And after I learned that it was even kind of horror-y, I was like, I think that he can handle this one. As mentioned in a previous video, I'm trying to keep both pages of a sketchbook spread cohesive. So even though I don't paint the other page at the same time, it will have a similar color scheme and be kind of thematically apt about like fish and stuff like that. So you'll see that in another video. I don't know if it would be the next one that I'm gonna post, probably. Because I'm pre-recording quite a few of these videos before I even start posting to YouTube, just so I have like some sort of backlog and I'm not like overwhelmed with having to meet a deadline immediately or anything like that. And hopefully it can kind of set me up to have a nice cushion in the future, and just, you know, it gives me some time to start this process and see what's gonna happen. And honestly, I'm doing this mostly for me and just to learn a new a new way of expressing my art, because it's, it's easy to get and feel a little stagnant. And so making videos just felt like a really natural progression for where I'm at in my art journey and how I feel about my art now, which is really happy and proud of where I'm at. And I want to share that. If you can't play Dredge yourself, I know Jacksepticeye has a playthrough, and I feel like the game deserves some love, and it's a really, really cool experience. So far, I think I could have played it just fine, even though I love horror. I'm not necessarily the best at like playing horror games, like Outlast, absolutely not. But this game, very tame, very slow going. Like the fish might scare the pee out of you the first time you see them, but other than that, I feel like I definitely could have managed. So I don't necessarily want to deter anybody from playing the game, because I mentioned that it was kind of horror-esque. I would say that it's very tame for horror, and story itself, the game is a lot more about going, catching fish, experiencing the art, experiencing the settings, and interacting with characters and getting their story and trying to piece together what the hell is happening in this cluster of islands in the middle of nowhere. It's very, very similar to Disco Elysium in that way, where it's more of a character journey, and you're definitely like trying to figure out what's happening to the people around you and what's going on to the fish, and why, you know, why things are the way they are now. And honestly, you're also trying to figure out why you're even there, like why the main character even exists and is in this situation in the first place. And so I love the game. I think it's literally like such a fun indie game. I also mentioned Death's Door. That's another indie game. Both of these specifically we play on the Switch, but you can get from like Steam, so you can play it on the PC. And Death's Door is another indie game I love. Hyper Light Drifter. Oh my goodness, Dead Cells. I adore Dead Cells. I own the art book for Dead Cells, Hyper Light Drifter. I got the limited edition copy of Death's Door, Cult of the Lamb. Oh my god, Cult of the Lamb. I adore that game. I also have the limited edition art book for that. I'm thinking about making a video, or maybe a couple videos, honestly, because I have a very big collection, about the different books that I have in my art book collection. Design books, movie art books, video game art books, just all kinds of stuff like that. And I wonder if that would be something that anyone would be interested in seeing and having me kind of talk through my collection, maybe in a 2-part video or something like that. Let me know if that sounds like something that anyone would enjoy. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close off the video. So I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye!